Hey, what's going on? My name's Robert, and you are watching Southpaw Autoworks. This is the Turbo 400. This video we're diving into the Planetary Gear Set, the assembly and installation of it, as well as how to check rear unit end plate. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Okay, I'm going to show you now how to put the rear section, the planetary section, all the way up to the center support together. First thing I want to show you is besides our piston, we've already got that installed with our seals. We've got some sealing rings that have to go on the center support here, 4 grooves here, okay? Just so you know, there's 6 total rings the same size. That's because the 2 that go on the pump are also the same as the 4 that go on the center support, okay? So you're going to have 6 of those total in your sealing ring kit. And what you want to do is get those set on there, okay? You can use snap ring pliers, but you got to be delicate with them because you will break them. They're a very brittle ring. What I found is you can usually just kind of very lightly slide them over and expand them slightly to work down to the last groove, okay? Trying to be delicate enough not to break the little hook ends on them or break the ring itself. All right, get down to the last one, and then you've got to hook each one. All right, sets in there. Let me show you a real quick check on these ring grooves because these grooves can wear out. They can become worn or damaged. And if the ring does not fit freely in the groove like that, okay, you've got a problem. All right, what I used to do is just take one of the new rings, lock it, okay, set it in the groove itself like this, okay, and spin it around, all right? If it'll do that in each of the grooves, then most likely your groove itself is okay. If it binds or catches in there, you've either got to replace the support or buy a little tiny set of needle files and come in here and kind of clean the groove up a little bit. A little cleanup is okay. If the groove itself is damaged or gouged or the surface here is damaged, you need to replace the support itself. But the main thing is that those rings are free once they're installed, all right? Can pretty much just do them by hand if you're delicate, all right? Okay, we've got the 4 new sealing rings on the center support, final prep on the center support itself. Flip it over. We've got a thrust washer, sits down in this little pocket down here, okay? This happens to be a plastic. They also make it in a steel back bronze, okay? What I like to do, take that, little bit of assembly goo, dab it on there, drop it in the pocket, okay? Just kind of stick her in place so she didn't fall out during assembly, all right? Next, I want to show you the bearings that I spoke of first, all right? You've got 3 3-piece bearings to go in this rear gear set, okay? This fat guy here, a little wider than the rest of them, 3-piece, all right? You got this guy here, 3 pieces also. I'm going to show you how to put all these together and where they go, all right? But on the center support itself, this little 3-piece guy, all right? Okay, this guy, when assembled, is going to be flipped over and assembled onto the center support. But all we're going to do is one piece at this point, okay? The top one, which is the shortest of the lip on those. This has got a little taller lip, okay? So shortest lip is the one that's going to go on the back of the center support there, okay? So I stick him in place, all right? Basically, we're done with the center support at this point, and we'll set that aside, okay? Now we're going to figure out where the rest of these bearings go, okay? Starting with our main shaft and our ring gear here, okay? The wide bearing, the widest of them all, 3 pieces, okay? It's going to go together like this. This little pocket piece is going to go down in there, okay? Let me stop and put a little blue goo on there, just to stick her in place, okay? Now this may be different, by the way. Notice just a little point here. See the notches in that race, okay? Factory bearing does not have notches in it, okay, or factory race. It's just a circle in the middle there, a hole, okay? It's just an update. It's perfectly fine, okay? Just wanted to show that to you so there's no confusion. So we put that guy down in there. Take the wide bearing that matches, drop him down into that little pocket. And then the other race for that bearing. And the lip on that is going to face down into there. Other side of the ring gear, okay, we're going to need another 3-piece bearing over here. All right. So we've got this guy. All right. Yep. 3 pieces also there. One with the little lip on it's going to go on first, and that lip is going to face up towards you. Bearing, doesn't matter which direction. And then the 3rd piece, and that's going to sit down onto that guy. So you've got that assembled. So you've got the skinny guy back here, 3 pieces. Fat guy or wider guy here, 3 pieces also in place. All right. We've got 2 leftovers. I'm going to show you those in a minute. Okay. We haven't forgot about them. Okay. So ring gear. First, we need our rear planetary. Okay. Pinions in here are going to mesh with that ring gear. Rotate that. Okay. Flip it over. Now our output shaft. Okay. Just a side note on the output shafts, these do vary from model to model. This would be like considered a medium to long length in a Buick Pontiac Olds, which is what the case is, which is what this came out of. Okay, there's an extremely short one, which would be a 4x4 application. Another one a little longer would be 2-wheel drive application in some other cars or trucks. And then this one, I believe there's even a longer one for Cadillac. That's basically the only thing that changes between 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive, or otherwise. The rest of the unit pretty much stays the same. So literally you could use this case or these guts in another case, change the output shaft, and it would become a 4-wheel drive unit. That's all that's the difference. The rest of the unit remains the same. Okay, just so you know, 2 gears on the back. Plastic one is the drive gear for your speedometer. The metal one, which is part of the output shaft, that drives what's called our governor. Okay, has a plastic gear that comes in and rides on that. Okay, so output shaft into the rear planet. Okay, usually what I do is flip this up, and I use the edge of the bench to kind of hold that for me a little bit. Smallest snap ring we had. And we're going to engage that. By the way, just letting you know, another small difference. Okay, this is a flat snap ring. Okay, some models used a tapered snap ring. It would be flat on one side, would have a little dome, a little taper on the other side. If you have that style of snap ring, the taper faces up towards you. Flat makes no difference which way it installs. Taper faces up. We've got to hook that into the groove in there, work that in. Okay. Make sure she snaps all the way into the groove. Okay. And what I like to do, just for GP, come in here, give them a little smack. Make sure that snap ring's seated all the way. Okay. I mentioned washers, 2 4-tangs earlier. We've got these 2 guys that came out of the unit. We're replacing them with 2 new ones, both steel back bronze. Notice the 4 holes here. That's where we're going to use one of the 4. All right. And we're going to stick him in place right there. That one, when this is flipped over and installed into the case, that guy's going to ride against our little 3-tang steel washer that fits in the back of the case. Okay, our selective washer. The selective washer controls how much movement front to rear that we have of all these components. Okay, and I'll show you how to measure that a little later on. Okay, Now, back against the bench here again, flipped over, our second 4-tanger. And we're going to stick him down inside this planetary. Got 4 holes for him to sit in right there and locate in place. Next, little plastic ring. Most books refer to this as a silencer ring, okay? It simply sets right over that little machined edge of that rear planetary, just like that. Nothing special about it. It's supposed to be a dampening, noise dampening device, okay? Set that in there. We've got our rear planet, or front planetary's got to go in there and right against that one, all right? And we got to rotate that to get it to mesh to all the pinions, okay? And we need another one-way clutch, which is this guy right here, all right? Also spring and roller type, okay? That's going to have to come in here and mesh, if you will, or lock in here in this rear planetary. Notice the little ramps and the little edge on there. Pretty straightforward on that. Just double checking you make sure you get that in the correct direction. If you see those are opposite, all right, we'll flip it over. And that should drop in there without too much of a fight. All right, you may have to push in on a few of the rollers, work it lightly down in place. Now what we're going to do is use up our last 2 pieces of bearing, okay? Lip on that faces up. I'm going to drop that in place down in here, okay? What we want to do first, though, is put our sun gear shaft in, this guy right here, okay? That'll help center it. Remember, sun gear shaft, wide splines go down, okay? Face down in there, okay? What's that going to spline into? Our sun gear, all right? This guy here, that side, and then I'll flip it. So the side with the little chamfer on it right here, as opposed to the flat, okay? Chamfer's going to face down into the planetary, okay? When we get this all assembled, you won't be able to see it down in there, but it's going to look like that. And then we're going to have that bearing race and the final bearing there, okay? Then once that's installed, the center support will go on right over that, and there's our third piece to our bearing right there. So we'll take this guy here, drop it down over, spin it, you get the sun gear to mesh with the pinions, make sure that's dropped all the way in place. And the last piece, gonna be that center support, making sure we still have our washer and our bearing race stuck in place there. They didn't fall off on us. Drop that over. And then we've got to rotate it into the one-way clutch, okay? Now, once again, we've got a one-way clutch we're working with. We want to make sure that this is installed properly. How do we know that? This is our anchoring piece. This is going to be held still by lug to the case, okay? The one-way clutch is inside your front planetary. If it's correct, we should rotate clockwise, right? And not rotate counterclockwise, right? So we know we're correct. Remember, engine rotation clockwise.
Hey, real quick, if this type of content is adding value, please let us know by hitting that like button. It does help the channel, and we do greatly appreciate your feedback.
Okay, we've got the rear planetary assembly center support basically ready to drop in the case. What I'm going to do is take a little marker here, just give me a little reference line, okay? From the center hole in the center support here, we've got 3, it's the large hole. I'm just going to come straight up above that, make me a little mark that I can see, so when I'm dropping this into the case, I know which way is basically straight down towards the valve body, okay? We've got to have this exactly lugged in the case, perfect position. So you can eyeball it, but this just gives me a little cheating point there to be able to tell that's going to face straight down towards the valve body. So we've got it ready to drop in the case. Once again, I'm going to use the edge of the bench. Okay, I'm going to have that mark that I made basically facing down towards me. I know that's towards the bottom of the case. Now we've got this whole assembly here. I don't know how much it weighs, but it's a pretty good amount. Okay, The only thing we can really grab a hold of to allow us to drop this in is this little main shaft. Okay, and Arnold Schwarzenegger ain't here, so I don't know anybody who can grab that and hold all that weight. We need a tool. GM makes a special tool that goes on here. Hold this. What I found is a pair of welding pliers, and sometimes you have to tweak the fingers on them in a little bit to grab, but this makes a pretty good holding fixture. If you get that locked on there, and then I use my 2 fingers, that becomes my lifting point for all that weight. We've already got our washer in the back of the case, so we're going to feed this down in there. All right. I'm going to kind of do what I call the drop test. Okay, we're going to lift up a little bit and kind of let it drop just a little bit down in the case. Make sure it sounds solid. Then we know we're all the way in the lugs, all the way against that little skinny snap ring. Okay. Remove the pliers. Okay, so we've got our planetary gear set center support assembly dropped into the case. We're pretty sure we've got it dropped down all the way. What we're going to do now is put our center support bolt in. And if we've got it lined up properly, this is our hole for the center support bolt. We should be able to thread right into that center support and know that we are in the right position for that. What I like to do is start the bolt, run it in there, know that I've got it lined up properly, but I'm not going to finish. A couple different reasons is we'd like to also get our center support snap ring in to kind of help locate that center support in proper place. Also, kind of another little trick for you here too, so that you don't forget. I've been known to do this before. So we start the bolt, we put our snap ring in, but we leave the bolt out far enough where it's sticking up above the valve body surface. Why do I do that? That'll help me remember to torque it. And what I mean by that is if I did forget by chance, I had to walk off and do something else, when I put my valve body on, it's going to rock. And I know there's something wrong. It'll make me take that valve body back off, double check the bolt. We do the same thing on the 40Ds, 4R100s. Leave them sticking up high enough so that we don't forget. In my line of work and what I do, where I'm shop foreman, I don't just build transmissions. I'm also doing diagnosis, road testing. I'm teaching two other kids to kind of come into the business. I can be pulled away at any minute to do something else. So very good chance I might forget something. That's just a little tip to help you out there. So we got the bolt started. We need to do our center support snap ring. Now here's our original. Well, this is the one we used, I believe, in one of the other videos where we've highlighted it with the blue paint pen. And we want to use that one just to kind of help you see what you're doing and how that locates down in the case. Remember, flat side down, tapered side up. This is your heaviest, thickest snap ring in the unit. And all we're going to do is just work it down in the case. There's no real trick to it. So working our snap ring down in the case here for that center support. See if we get one end at least close to get started. And we just work it around. It's going to want to get caught in that upper snap ring groove, so you just have to keep working it, knock it in there. Now what I like to do, just to be sure it's seated all the way, we're going to come in here at an angle, take our screwdriver, hammer, kind of starting from the center, and then work out towards the open end of the snap ring, either way. And just make sure she's seated all the way. So at this point, what we would need to do is go do our rear end plate check, if we haven't done so already and mocked it up, knowing that we may have to change that washer in the back of the case, so we don't want to go ahead and finish torquing our center support bolt at this time. So I wanted to show you the center support and the bolt out that we're installing, just so you know what we're doing here and you can get an exact idea. This is where we're threading through the case into that center bolt hole or center hole in that center support, and that's where it's going to be located. Another thing we wanted to mention to you is on this center support bolt, normally what I recommend is replacing it on every build. Unfortunately anymore it's kind of hard to source that bolt. I don't know if they quit making them or what, but it is hard to find those. A little tip for you. The 4L80E center support bolt could be used in place, but what we're going to do here is you can see the length difference. we're going to need to cut that a little bit shorter. So just to let you know, those are still readily available. The 400 bolt, I was having trouble trying to source that. So we use this guy, cut him short to match the 400, put him in there with a drop of blue Loctite is what I do on the final assembly before I torque it down.
Looking for Turbo 400 parts and tools? If so, check out the resources section in the video description down below.
So what we need to do once we get our gear set in the back of the case here is check for rear unit end play. And that's basically just how much movement we're getting of the output shaft and all the components moving back and forth in there, okay? Which is very minimal. You can barely hear it clunking in there, and I do have a feeler blade in there trying to measure it at this point. But it's way down the back of the case, okay? And it's gonna be between the big 3-tang washer that sits in the case and the 4-tang washer that sits on the back of that output shaft, okay? And what you can do is come in here with a screwdriver, pry all the components forward, then you take your feeler blade, see how thick of a feeler blade you can get between the two washers, that giving you your rear unit end play. I think on this unit it starts out at about 9 thousandths and goes up into the teens if I'm not mistaken. I had a 5 thousandths in there, was still a little loose. I'm thinking we're probably in about that 8 to 9 thousandths range, okay? But that's what we're trying to measure, is just that little bit of movement. You can barely see it on the output shaft. It's kind of rocking a little bit. So what we want to do here is show you a little more specific on what it is we were measuring for rear end play. So we've got everything laid out on the bench. We were measuring between the 4-tang washer here on the back of this output shaft to the one that lugged to the case. So literally what I was doing is coming in through the hole in the case at the governor, okay, and measuring between there and there, okay, when it was all together in the case itself. So however thick of feeler blade I could fit in there, that would be our rear unit end play, right there. Very hard to see in the case, very hard to do in the case. So I thought this might give you a better idea where we were measuring, there and there. So we were showing you where we were doing the measurement for the rear end play on this 400. We've got it back out on the bench here, of course. We've got this 3-tang washer to 4-tang there. Just wanted to give you a detail on that. And where we were checking that end play was the clearance between those two washers. That was the amount of movement of all the components in the back of the case moving front to back. And we want to get that set to a certain specification, that clearance. And in order to do that, just so you know, this is the guy you got to change. He comes in about 6 different thicknesses, starting out, I think, at 75 thousandths or so, give or take, up to about 115. So this is about a 92 thousandths. If we needed to tighten this up and get rid of some of the end play in there, of course, we just go to the next size up, thicker washer, or thinner as necessary to open up the clearance. Okay, that is critical on pretty much any transmission. The reason being is that's lubrication oil. Okay, too much end play, too much clearance allows too much of that oil to escape. It would be like having excessive clearance on your rod or main bearings in your engine. Okay, it can create a real issue. So we always want to snug this up towards the tighter end of the specification. And be aware you want to make accurate measurements on this, of course, and the reason I say that is because these washers are not cheap. They're not readily available. You don't want to run out and buy a bunch of these at, you know, I don't know what they're going for, it might be $20, $30 a pop. So one check, one change if you need to, one washer purchase would be best.
At this point in time, we've covered what it takes to assemble the planetary gear set, install that gear set into the transmission case, how to check rear unit end play, and how to adjust that end play should it need to be adjusted. So this unit, as far as the planetary gear set and the rear unit end play are concerned, this thing's good to go, which leaves us with one thing left to do. And that's just a matter of installing this bolt into the center support. For that, we need a very specific socket. This is a 3/8 socket that's of the 12-point flavor and it's a thin wall, and in fact it's been modified to make the thin wall even thinner. Before the bolt gets installed, just apply a little bit of medium strength thread locker. Start the bolt by hand. Run it down until it's snug, and then torque it to 22 foot-pounds. This show is a ton of hours to produce, and we could use your support. You can learn more by checking out the video description down below. So Andy and I, we just got done going through the Turbo 400 Planetary Gear Set. In the near future, we're going to be continuing this build series and covering things like the intermediate clutch, the pump, the valve body, and so on. Point is, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell too, so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Once again, my name's Robert, and I will see you next time.